The shooting range at the Special Forces headquarters fell silent as Captain Farhan slammed his fist on the observation table. 13 red crosses marked the target board, 13 failed attempts by Pakistan's most elite snipers. The mission was critical. A high-value terrorist commander would be exposed for exactly 3 seconds during a planned meeting. One shot. One chance. And 13 of the best had already missed during the qualification trial. "This is impossible," muttered Lieutenant Saad, wiping sweat from his forehead. "The distance, the angle, the time window, it's designed to fail." Major Imran stood at the window, his jaw clenched. "We don't have a choice. Intelligence says this target will disappear after tomorrow. This is our only opportunity in 3 years." Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. The door opened quietly. A young woman in a standard military uniform walked in, carrying a stack of equipment maintenance reports. Sergeant Zara Malik, 26 years old, barely 5 feet 4 inches, worked in the technical support division. Her job was to maintain rifles, calibrate scopes, and file paperwork. Nobody paid her any attention as she moved through the room, organizing ammunition logs. "Get out," Captain Farhan snapped without looking at her. "This is a closed session." "Sir, I need to verify the rifle specifications for." "I said get out." He grabbed the papers from her hands and threw them across the floor. "We don't have time for clerks right now." Zara knelt slowly, gathering the scattered papers with hands that trembled slightly. Her hijab was pinned neatly, her uniform crisp despite the dismissive treatment. She had joined the military 5 years ago, following in her father's footsteps. He had been a soldier, martyred in an operation when she was 17. She had scored top marks in every training program, including advanced marksmanship. But like many women in the service, she had been quietly directed toward support roles. "Permission to attempt the shot, sir," she said, her voice steady despite her shaking hands. The room erupted in laughter. Lieutenant Saad nearly choked on his tea. Even Major Imran turned around with raised eyebrows. "Did the equipment girl just volunteer?" someone muttered. Captain Farhan's face flushed red. "This isn't a joke, Sergeant. The rifle alone weighs 15 kilograms. Look at your hands, they're shaking just holding papers." But Zara was already walking toward the firing line. Major Imran raised his hand, silencing the mockery. Something about her purposeful stride caught his attention. "Let her try. What's the harm? She'll miss like everyone else." Zara settled into position behind the rifle. She pulled a small container from her pocket, medication she took daily for a nerve condition caused by an injury 2 years ago during a training accident. The doctors said she'd never shoot again. She proved them wrong every day in private, adapting her technique to work with the tremor instead of against it. She adjusted the scope without looking at the markings, her muscle memory taking over. Her fingers moved across the rifle's surface like she was reading Braille. The others noticed something odd. Despite the tremor in her hands, she handled the weapon with unusual familiarity. Lieutenant Saad stopped laughing. "Wait, how does she?" "Target is 1,200 meters, she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. "Crosswind from the northwest at 8 kilometers per hour. Humidity at 62%. 3-second exposure window." Her breathing slowed into a controlled rhythm, 4 counts in, hold, 4 counts out. Captain Farhan moved closer to the observation window. He had trained hundreds of shooters in his 15-year career, but something about her stance looked wrong. Not wrong as in incorrect, but wrong as in it didn't match someone who supposedly just maintained equipment. The way she positioned her shoulder, the angle of her cheek against the stock, the specific finger placement on the trigger, these were techniques that took years to perfect. "This is absurd," Captain Farhan said, but his voice had lost its certainty. "We're wasting ammunition while our target plans his next attack." Zara ignored him. Her entire world narrowed to the scope, the target, and the rhythm of her breathing. The tremor in her hands didn't stop, it couldn't stop. The nerve damage was permanent. But she had learned something over 2 years of secret practice. The tremor followed a pattern, a rhythm like a heartbeat. And if she timed everything perfectly, there was a split second between tremors when her hands were completely still. Through the scope, she could see the practice target, a small red circle at an impossible distance. She waited. 1 breath. 2 breaths. Her finger rested on the trigger with the lightest possible pressure. Then, in that microsecond between heartbeats, when her hands aligned with perfect stillness, she squeezed. The rifle's crack echoed through the range. The recoil absorbed perfectly into her shoulder. For 3 seconds, nothing happened as the bullet traveled its arc through the air. 3 seconds during which Captain Farhan's sneer remained frozen. 3 seconds during which Major Imran held his breath. 3 seconds during which every person in that room forgot to breathe. Impact! The range officer's voice cracked over the speaker. Dead center. Perfect shot. 1,200 meters. The silence that followed was deafening. Lieutenant Saad's teacup slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor. Someone's phone clattered on the concrete. Captain Farhan took an involuntary step backward. Major Imran moved to the spotting scope, verifying what he couldn't believe. The bullet had struck exactly in the center of the target. Not close. Not almost. Perfect. That's impossible, Captain Farhan whispered. Who are you? Zara stood up slowly, her hands resuming their constant tremor. She turned to face the room. Sergeant Zara Malik, sir. Equipment maintenance specialist. She paused. And former member of the specialized sniper program, class of 2019. Major Imran's eyes widened. You were in that program? But the record said. The record said I was medically discharged after the training accident, Zara completed. Permanent nerve damage. Unfit for field duty. I was reassigned to technical support. She looked down at her trembling hands. But they never said I stopped practicing. Captain Farhan's face had gone pale. The accident. 2 years ago. You were the trainee who was hit by shrapnel during the live-fire exercise. Zara nodded. I was pulling a wounded classmate to safety when an explosive device detonated. The medic said I'd never hold a rifle steady again. So I learned to shoot differently. I learned to work with the tremor, not against it. Why didn't you request to return to active duty? Major Imran asked. I did, sir. 3 times. Each request was denied. They said a sniper with shaking hands was a liability. Her voice remained calm, factual. So I stayed in maintenance, calibrating rifles for others, and practiced alone every chance I got. Lieutenant Saad found his voice. You just made an impossible shot that 13 of our best snipers couldn't make. And you've been fixing equipment for 2 years? Yes, sir. Major Imran made a decision. Sergeant Malik, how would you like to be activated for tomorrow's operation? The room erupted in protests. Sir, with all respect. She's not cleared for. This is too important to. Enough. Major Imran's voice cut through the noise. She just did what none of you could do. The target appears for 3 seconds tomorrow. We need the person who can make that shot, regardless of their job title or medical history. Zara stood at attention. I'm ready, sir. I've been ready since the day they discharged me from sniper training. The next 18 hours were a blur of preparation. Zara was given accelerated tactical briefings, studied reconnaissance photos, and memorized the operation plan. The target was a terrorist commander responsible for coordinating attacks that had killed hundreds of civilians. Intelligence had located him in a compound where he would appear briefly on a balcony during a meeting. One shot. One opportunity. Captain Farhan, despite his earlier resistance, became her coordinator. You'll have one chance, he told her during the final briefing. After you shoot, the entire compound will be on alert. The extraction team will have 90 seconds to get you out. I understand, sir. No, he said, his voice softer. I don't think you do. If you miss, this target disappears forever. If you're captured. He didn't finish the sentence. I won't miss. And I won't be captured. The night of the mission, Zara was inserted with a 4-person team to a position overlooking the target compound. She carried a custom rifle, one she had personally maintained and modified over the past 2 years. Every screw, every adjustment, every calibration was her work. They reached the position 2 hours before the target's scheduled appearance. Zara set up behind a cluster of rocks that provided both cover and a clear line of sight. Through her scope, she could see guards patrolling, lights in windows, the balcony where the target would appear. Overwatch, this is command, the radio crackled in her ear. Target expected in 15 minutes. Copy that, command. The team leader, a veteran sergeant named Rashid, crouched beside her. You good? Zara nodded, her hands trembling as they always did. I'm good. That tremor, will it affect the shot? It's part of the shot now. Rashid didn't understand, but he trusted the determination in her voice. He'd seen that look before in soldiers who had something to prove. At exactly 2,200 hours, vehicles arrived at the compound. Armed men emerged, security increased. And then, surrounded by bodyguards, the target stepped onto the balcony. Zara could see him clearly through her scope, the man responsible for so much death and suffering. Overwatch, you are cleared to engage. She controlled her breathing, becoming one with the rifle. The tremor in her hands followed its familiar rhythm. She calculated wind speed, distance, the slight drop in temperature. Her finger rested on the trigger. The target moved constantly, never standing still, always protected by others. She needed one clear moment. Just one. Seconds felt like hours. Her muscles burned from holding position. Sweat ran down her back despite the cool night air. And then, for exactly 3 seconds, the target stepped to the railing alone to speak into a phone. He stood exposed, lit by security lights. 3 seconds. That's all she had. Zara exhaled slowly, found that perfect moment between tremors and squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked against her shoulder. The suppressor reduced the sound to a sharp crack that echoed across the valley. And 1,200 meters away the target dropped. Chaos erupted in the compound. Guards shouted, weapons fired randomly into the darkness. But Zara was already moving. She broke down her position in 20 seconds, secured her gear and followed Sergeant Rashid down the hill. The extraction vehicle was waiting exactly where it should be. They reached it in 8 minutes, record time over rough terrain. Confirmed kill, Rashid reported to command. Overwatch is secure. We're moving to extract. The drive back to base took 2 hours. During that time, Zara sat in silence, her hands shaking worse than usual from adrenaline. She had just completed the most important mission of her career, but she felt no triumph. Only relief that it was over. Back at headquarters, Major Imran met her as she climbed out of the vehicle. "Well done, Sergeant." The respect in his eyes said more than his words. The next morning, the briefing room was full again. The same officers who had doubted her now looked at her differently. Major Imran stood at the front. At 2,200 hours, Sergeant Malik successfully neutralized the high-value target with a single shot at 1,200 meters under combat conditions. 13 experienced snipers failed to qualify for this mission. Sergeant Malik not only qualified but completed it with 0 complications. He paused. "She's requested a transfer to active field duty." Major Imran looked at her. "Request granted. We need more soldiers like you, Sergeant. Not because you succeeded where others failed, but because you never stopped being a soldier even when they told you that you couldn't." Captain Farhan, who had thrown her papers on the floor just 2 days ago, stood up. "Sergeant Malik, I owe you an apology. I judged you by your job title and your medical condition instead of your capabilities. That was wrong." Zara nodded, accepting the apology with quiet dignity. Later, as she walked back to her quarters, soon to be reassigned, Lieutenant Saad caught up with her. "You know what they're saying?" he asked with a slight smile. "What?" 13 misses. 1 bullet left. And the quiet one took the shot they all feared. Zara smiled faintly. She wasn't doing this for recognition or to prove anyone wrong. She was doing it because she was a soldier, because her country needed her, because her father's sacrifice deserved to be honored with service. But if her success opened doors for others, for the women who would come after her, who had the skills but never got the chance, then maybe that 1 bullet had hit more than just its target. 3 months later, Zara led her first training session for new sniper candidates. Not as a token female instructor, but as a respected operator. She trained others, completed successful missions and slowly changed minds that had been closed for years. The mission with 13 misses became part of military legend. Not because a woman succeeded where men failed, but because the right soldier was finally given the right opportunity at the right time. Sometimes the loudest impact comes from the quietest shot. And sometimes courage isn't about being fearless. It's about being doubted, being dismissed, being told you're finished, and taking the shot anyway. Sergeant Zara Malik proved that disability doesn't define ability. That trembling hands can still find stillness. That a woman maintaining equipment in silence can be the deadliest shooter in the room. She proved that sometimes 13 failures just mean you haven't found the right person yet. And when you find them, when you give them the chance they deserve, they don't just succeed. They make history. The story of Sergeant Zara Malik spread throughout the military. Young women joining the service would hear about the equipment specialist with shaking hands who made the impossible shot. They would learn that obstacles, physical, institutional, or social, were not endpoints. They were challenges to overcome. Zara herself remained humble. When asked about that night, about that perfect shot, she would simply say, "I did my job." Every soldier in this uniform does the same. The only difference is that someone finally let me do mine. But those who served with her knew the truth. She hadn't just completed a mission. She had shattered barriers that had stood for decades. She had proved that courage, skill, and dedication weren't limited by gender or physical condition. She had shown that sometimes, the person everyone overlooks is exactly the person everyone needs. 13 misses. 1 bullet left. 1 woman who refused to miss her chance. 1 shot that changed everything.